Hey guys, tonight we are going to talk about betrayal. Not the small stuff, not your friend stealing your favorite pen, or your roommate eating the last slice of pizza. I mean the deep kind. The kind that comes from the people who are supposed to be your safe place, your family. Imagine your own brothers, the ones you grew up with, the ones who shared bread with you, deciding your life is worth less than a handful of silver coins. You're standing at the bottom of a dark, dry well, the circle of sky above you shrinking as their faces peer down, not with pity, but with a cold, hard finality. That's the kind of betrayal we're diving into. And let's be honest, if that happened to you, in that time, in that place, you probably won't survive this. The emotional shock alone would be enough to shatter most people. But this is a story about the one who did. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to see where you're tuning in from. Go ahead and post your city and what time it is for you in the comments. It's always a quiet joy for me to see how this little community of ours spans the globe. All of us finding a moment of peace at the same time, or at different times, together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story doesn't begin in the dark pit, but in the deceptive sunlight of a family home in the rolling hills of Canaan. It begins not with a shout, but with a quiet, lingering gaze. The gaze of an old man, Jacob, whose eyes, filmed over with age and memory, follow the movements of his second youngest son, Joseph. To understand the betrayal, you first have to understand the love that caused it. This wasn't just any love. It was a love born from grief. A love that was a monument to a ghost. Jacob, whom God had renamed Israel, was a man whose entire life had been a series of struggles. He wrestled with his brother in the womb. He wrestled for his father's blessing. He wrestled with his father-in-law for his wives and his wages. And he even wrestled with an angel of God by a riverbank until dawn. He was a man shaped by conflict and striving. But his deepest wound, the one that never quite healed, was the loss of Rachel. She was the love of his life, the reason he'd worked 14 long years. Lee, her sister, had given him a host of sons, strong and sturdy boys who were the foundation of his growing tribe. But Rachel was his heart. And after years of waiting, she had given him Joseph. And Jacob looked at Joseph. He didn't just see a boy. He saw a miracle. He saw the soft curve of Rachel's smile, the light in her eyes, the echo of her laugh in the boy's clear voice. Joseph was a walking, breathing memory of the woman he had loved more than life itself. And then, tragically, Rachel had died giving birth to Joseph's younger brother, Benjamin. The birth of his youngest son was inextricably linked to the death of his greatest love. So Benjamin was a source of quiet sorrow, a precious, fragile thing to be protected. But Joseph was the living, vibrant legacy of his joy with Rachel before the sorrow came. He was Rachel, alive again, running through the fields of Hebron. This love, so beautiful and so poignant in the old man's heart, became a poison in the soil of his family. Love is meant to be like the sun, warming everyone it touches. But Jacob's love for Joseph was like a spotlight, intense and focused, leaving everyone else standing in the cold shadows. And the other sons felt it. Oh, they felt it. They weren't fools. They were grown men, most of them. They had wives and children of their own. They were shepherds, tough and weathered by the sun and the wind. They knew the hard realities of life. They protected the flocks from lions and bears. They negotiated for grazing rights at wells. They were the backbone of the family's wealth and survival. Yet, in their father's eyes, they were just the scenery. Joseph was the masterpiece. There was Reuben, the firstborn. He should have been the one his father looked to, the one who held the place of honor. But Reuben carried a shame. He had committed a grave sin against his father's honor years ago, and the stain of it never washed away. He walked with a permanent stoop in his soul, always trying to regain the favor he had lost. But the warmth of his father's full approval never returned to him. He saw the affection lavished on Joseph and felt the sting of his own failure, a constant, dull ache of what should have been his. He was the eldest, but he was not the most loved, and this inversion of the natural order gnawed at him. He felt a responsibility for his younger brothers, a desire to keep the peace, but he lacked the moral authority and the force of will to truly lead them. He was a man caught in the middle, his birthright a hollow title. Then there were Simeon and Levi, a dangerous pair. Their fury was a legend in the family. When their sister Dinah had been violated, they hadn't waited for their father's counsel. They had acted with a brutal, deceptive vengeance, slaughtering the men of an entire city. Jacob had never forgotten it, the fear and the shame they had brought upon his household. He looked at them and saw their hot-blooded recklessness. They saw the way he looked at them, with a caution that bordered on fear. And then they'd see the unreserved, gentle love he poured out on Joseph. To them, it was the ultimate hypocrisy. Their father condemned their strength, their willingness to defend the family's honor. Yet he celebrated the softness of a boy who had never faced a real threat in his life. Their resentment wasn't just jealousy. It was a simmering, volcanic rage. They felt disrespected, misunderstood, and judged. The special treatment Joseph received was, in their eyes, a daily affirmation of their father's disapproval of them. And Judah was different. He was not as hot-headed as Simeon and Levi, nor as guilt-ridden as Reuben. There was a strength in Judah, a pragmatism. He would one day become the ancestor of kings, and you could see the seeds of that quality in him even then. He was a natural leader, the one the others often looked to when a decision needed to be made. But he too was eclipsed. He worked just as hard. He was just as loyal. But the spotlight always found Joseph. Judah's jealousy was perhaps more calculated. He saw the family's delicate social structure being undermined. A house so obviously divided by a father's favoritism was a weak house. He saw Joseph not just as an annoying, pampered little brother, but as a genuine threat to the stability and future of the family of Israel. His resentment was mixed with a cold, clear-eyed assessment of the situation. This cannot continue. The other 6 sons of the handmaidens, Zilpah and Bilhah, felt the hierarchy even more keenly. They were already a step below the sons of Lee, and Joseph, the son of the beloved Rachel, was placed on a pedestal so high they could barely see him. They were the laborers, the ones who did the grittiest work, their hands calloused and their faces burned by the sun. They watched Joseph, often kept close to the tents, learning sums and stories from his father, and the unfairness of it all was a bitter taste in their mouths every single day. They didn't have the status of the elder brothers, so their complaints were quieter, whispered among themselves as they guided the sheep to new pastures, a shared brotherhood of the overlooked. Into this simmering pot of resentment, Jacob, in an act of what can only be described as loving blindness, tossed a lit match. He decided to give Joseph a gift. This wasn't just any gift. It wasn't a new lamb or a finely crafted slingshot. It was a coat. The King James Version calls it a coat of many colors, but the original Hebrew is a little more ambiguous and far more meaningful. The phrase, Kethanath Passim, could mean a coat of many colors, but it could also mean a coat with long sleeves, reaching down to the palms and the ankles. To us, a long-sleeved coat is just a piece of clothing. But in their world, in that culture, it was a staggering statement. The working man, the shepherd, wore a simple, sleeveless tunic that ended at the knees. You needed your arms and legs free to run, to climb, to haul a stray sheep out of a thicket, to draw water from a well. A long, ornate robe with full-length sleeves was the garment of royalty, of a manager, of someone who did not perform manual labor. It was a garment that said, "My hands are not for working, they are for ruling. My feet are not for trudging through dusty fields, they are for walking in high places." When Jacob presented this coat to Joseph, he wasn't just saying, "I love you, son." He was saying, "You are different. You are better. You are the heir, the prince of this family, and your brothers are your subjects, your laborers." He might not have used those words. He might not have even consciously thought them. But every single one of his other sons heard them, loud and clear. Imagine the scene. Jacob, his face beaming with pride, calling Joseph forward. The boy, just 17, his face still holding the softness of youth, his eyes wide with excitement. The unveiling of the garment, the gasp you could have heard from the others. Not a gasp of admiration, but of shock and outrage. The colors, if it was indeed a coat of many colors, would have been dazzling. Dyes were expensive, a sign of immense wealth. Purple from sea snails, crimson from insects, bright yellow from saffron. It would have shimmered in the Canaanite sun. The fabric would have been softer, the cut more elegant than anything his brothers had ever worn. Joseph, in his youthful innocence, would have slipped it on, his heart swelling with love for his father. He would have turned, a bright smile on his face, wanting his brothers to share in his joy. And he would have been met with a wall of stony silence. 10 pairs of eyes, hard as flint, jaws clenched. The smiles on their faces, if any, were thin, brittle things that didn't reach their eyes. They would have mumbled their congratulations, their voices flat and empty. But their eyes would have been screaming screaming with years of pent-up jealousy, frustration, and a fresh, searing hatred. The Bible puts it simply and powerfully. And they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. The peace was broken. The coat became a symbol, a walking, talking billboard of Jacob's favoritism and Joseph's special status. Every time Joseph wore it, which was likely every day, he was a living, breathing provocation to his brothers. He wasn't just their brother anymore. He was a constant reminder of their lesser place in their father's heart. He was the reason for their father's diverted gaze, the reason for the emptiness they felt. The coat was like a target painted on his back, a target his brothers would soon aim for. The beautiful gift of a loving father had become a shroud, being woven thread by thread with the hatred of his sons. And if that wasn't enough, Joseph started to have dreams. Now, in our modern world, we tend to dismiss dreams as random firings of synapses, our subconscious processing the day's events. But in the ancient world, dreams were serious business. They were windows into the divine, messages from God, prophecies of what was to come. And Joseph's dreams were not subtle. They were grand, epic, and profoundly self-aggrandizing. Picture this. It's morning. The family is gathered for the morning meal. The air is already thick with the unspoken tension that has become the new normal. The brothers are eating their bread and olives in silence, avoiding eye contact. Joseph, perhaps still glowing from the visions of the night, can't contain himself. He is bursting with the news, with the wonder of it all. He sees his dreams not as a statement of his own superiority, but as a fascinating piece of news from God that his family simply has to hear. He has the social awareness of a golden retriever puppy, all enthusiasm and no guile. Listen to this dream I had, he blurts out, his voice full of excitement. He doesn't notice the 10 heads that snap up, the 10 pairs of eyes that narrow. We were all out in the field, binding sheaves of grain. And suddenly, my sheaf stood up straight and tall. And believe it or not, all of your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. You could have heard a pin drop. The audacity of it. The unbelievable arrogance. Here he was, the boy who did the least work in the fields, the boy in the fancy robe, telling them, the hardworking men who actually harvested the grain, that their very livelihood, their sheaves, would one day bow down to his. It was a metaphor so obvious, so insulting, that it felt like a slap in the face. Reuben probably choked on his bread. Simeon and Levi likely gripped the hilts of the knives at their belts. Judah would have just stared, his expression unreadable, but his mind racing, confirming all his worst fears about the boy's ambition. They didn't see a message from God. They saw the arrogant fantasy of a spoiled brat, a fantasy their father's favoritism had nurtured. The Bible says, they hated him all the more for his dreams and for his words. The wedge between them was driven deeper. The hatred, which had been simmering, was now boiling. They had hated him for being the favorite. Now they hated him for his presumed ambition. They saw him as a threat, a usurper who dreamed of ruling over them, the rightful heirs. Any sensible person, any person with a shred of self-preservation or social intelligence would have learned their lesson. They would have seen the murderous looks in their brother's eyes and decided that perhaps it would be best to keep any future dreams to themselves. But Joseph was not just any person. He was 17, and he was, it seems, convinced of the divine origin and importance of these visions. And so, he had another dream, and he told them that one too. This time, he takes it a step further. It's not just their sheaves on earth, it's the celestial bodies in the heavens. Listen, he says, perhaps a few days later, his inability to read the room truly breathtaking. I had another dream. This time, I saw the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowing down to me. This was no longer just an insult to his brothers. This was an affront to the entire patriarchal structure. The sun, their father Jacob, the moon, their mother, or perhaps the memory of Rachel, or Lee who had raised him. The 11 stars, his brothers. He was declaring, in the clearest symbolic language imaginable, that the entire family, including the patriarch himself, would one day prostrate themselves before him. This time, even Jacob couldn't let it slide. The doting father had to become the disciplinarian. "What is this dream you have had?" He rebukes him, his voice sharp. "Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" It was an unthinkable scenario. The family structure was sacred, the hierarchy divinely ordained. A father did not bow to a son. It was a rebuke, and a public one at that. For a moment, the brothers might have felt a flicker of satisfaction. Finally, their father saw the boy's arrogance for what it was. Then, the story adds a crucial, quiet detail. After rebuking him, it says of Jacob, but his father kept the matter in mind. While he scolded the boy for his audacity, the old man, who had his own history with prophetic dreams, who had seen a ladder to heaven at Bethel, couldn't entirely dismiss it. He tucked the dream away in a corner of his heart, a seed of possibility. What if it was from God? The thought both thrilled and troubled him. He was a man who knew God spoke in mysterious ways. He didn't understand it, but he didn't forget it. The brothers, however, did not keep the matter in mind. They nursed it. They fed it. The dream echoed in their conversations. It festered in their hearts. The Bible says his brothers were jealous of him. This is the key. The hatred born of favoritism was now supercharged with the jealousy born of his dreams. Jealousy is a powerful and corrosive acid. It sees the good fortune of another not just as something it lacks, but as a personal injury. Joseph's dreams felt like a theft of their own honor, their own future. He wasn't just loved more, he was now destined for more, and his destiny seemed to be built upon their submission. The stage was now perfectly set. You have a doting, grief-stricken father who expresses his love in a way that creates deep division. You have a group of hardworking, overlooked sons whose simmering resentment has been fanned into a flame of open hatred by perceived arrogance. And you have a young, naive dreamer wrapped in a coat of privilege who is utterly oblivious to the mortal danger he is in. He is a lamb, decorated for a festival, with no idea that he is the intended sacrifice. The final act of this prelude to disaster begins on an ordinary day. The 10 brothers had taken the flocks to graze near Shechem, about 50 miles north. This was not a random place. Shechem was the very city where Simeon and Levi had enacted their bloody revenge years before. It was a place with a dark history for the family, a place of violence. It was a long way from the protective gaze of their father. Weeks might have passed. Jacob, back in Hebron, starts to worry. He hasn't heard from them. Are they safe? Are the flocks okay? He turns to the one son who is with him. Joseph, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, Jacob tells him, and bring word back to me. There's a terrible, dramatic irony here. The father, concerned for the well-being of his 10 sons, sends his most beloved son into the very crucible of their hatred. He sends the one they cannot speak peaceably to on a mission of peace. He sends the one they are most jealous of to check on their welfare. He wraps his lamb in a wolf skin and sends him to the wolves' den for a report. Joseph, ever the dutiful son, doesn't hesitate. Here I am, he says. He puts on his beautiful coat, the one that is like a red flag to a bull, and he sets off. He is a boy on an errand for his father, walking toward his destiny. He is alone, a vibrant splash of color against the dusty, brown landscape of Canaan. He travels the long miles to Shechem, but his brothers aren't there. He is wandering in the fields, a stranger in a familiar land, when another man finds him. What are you looking for? The man asks. I'm looking for my brothers, Joseph replies. A sentence so full of poignant innocence, it's almost painful to hear. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? They have moved on from here, the man says. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. Dothan, another 10 miles or so north. The name itself means 2 wells. It is a place of waiting water and a place of awaiting fate. The kindness of this unnamed stranger, a small act of helpfulness, inadvertently seals Joseph's doom. Without this man's direction, Joseph might have returned home, the tragic confrontation postponed. But the path was set. He thanks the man and continues his journey, walking with purpose now, closer and closer to the brothers who have been watching for him, not with anticipation, but with malice. And they see him, while he is still a long way off, a speck of color on the horizon. They recognize him. It's the coat, the hated, offensive, arrogant coat. It gives him away. And in that moment, seeing that coat, that symbol of all their grievances, moving steadily toward them, something inside them snaps. The years of resentment, the jealousy, the insults of his dreams, it all coalesces into a single, dark, murderous thought. Here comes that dreamer. They sneer to one another, the words dripping with contempt. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. The toxic family dynamic, fueled by favoritism and arrogance, had finally reached its flashpoint. The storm that had been gathering for years was about to break. Joseph, the beloved son, the boy with the coat and the dreams, walks on, unaware that he is about to step out of the sunlight of his father's love cold, terrifying darkness of a pit, a darkness dug for him by the hands of his own brothers. The betrayal is no longer a feeling, a resentment, a whispered plot. It is about to become a brutal, physical reality. And the quiet hills of Dothan are about to bear witness to an act so cold it would echo through generations. He walks on, his steps light with the simple purpose of his errand. The sun is high now, beating down on the plains of Dothan, and the air shimmers with heat above the dusty ground. In the distance, the vast, undulating sea of his family's flocks bleats softly, a familiar and comforting sound. And there, clustered together in the shade of a sparse grove of terebinth trees, are his brothers. Finally, a smile touches Joseph's lips, a genuine expression of relief and affection. The long walk is over. He raises a hand, waving, his other hand instinctively touching the fine wool of his coat. A silent thank you to the Father who sent him. He is still too far away to make out their expressions, but he sees them stir. He sees them turn towards him, a unified wall of 10 men, and he quickens his pace, eager to deliver his father's greetings and perhaps share a skin of cool water. As he draws closer, the landscape of his reception begins to feel strange, alien. There are no return waves, no welcoming calls. There is only a heavy, watchful stillness. The 20 paces between them feel like a mile, 10 paces. He can see their faces now, and the smile on his own falters and dies. The faces are not familiar. They are his brothers' faces, yes, but they are twisted into masks of something he has never seen directed at him before. It is not annoyance. It is not irritation. It is a chilling, predatory focus. The air, which moments before was filled with the pastoral sounds of sheep and cicadas, is now thick with a silence that crackles with menace. His forward momentum slows. A cold knot of confusion begins to form in his stomach. Why are they looking at him like that? Like a wolf looks at a lamb that has wandered too far from its mother. "I've come from Father," he says, his voice sounding small and uncertain to his own ears. He sends his greetings. He wants to know if all is well with you and the flocks. He offers the words as a bridge, a reason for his being there, a return to normalcy. But the words fall into the abyss of their silence and vanish. And then the stillness breaks. It does not break with words, but with motion. Sudden, violent, and coordinated. Simeon is the first to move, his powerful shepherd's body closing the distance in 2 quick strides. Levi is right with him. Before Joseph can process what is happening, rough hands seize him. One hand grabs the collar of his coat, another fists in his hair, yanking his head back. A cry of shock and pain escapes his lips. The dreamer, Simeon, snarls, his face a mask of contempt, spittle flying from his lips. "Let's see you dream your way out of this." Panic, pure and electric, floods Joseph's body. This is not a rough joke. This is not a brotherly tussle. This is an assault. He struggles, but he is a boy of 17, soft from a life lived near the tents, and they are 10 hardened men. He is utterly, hopelessly outmatched. He feels a tearing sound, a sound that rips through his heart as much as it does the air. It is the sound of his beautiful coat, his father's gift, being torn from his body. They pull and rip at the fabric with a coordinated fury, as if the garment itself has personally offended them. He sees a flash of brilliant crimson, then deep blue, as the pieces are rent apart. The long sleeves that marked him as special are yanked down his arms, scraping his skin. The coat, a moment ago a symbol of love and status, is now a collection of ruined rags in their hands. They throw the tattered pieces to the dust and trample on them, grinding the vibrant colors under their sandals. They are not just stripping him of a garment. They are stripping him of his identity, of his father's favor, of everything that made him Joseph. He is left standing before them, trembling and exposed in his simple undertunic. The sun feels hotter on his bare arms, the world colder. He looks from one brother's face to the next, his eyes wide with disbelief and pleading. Reuben, his eldest brother, won't meet his gaze, staring at a point somewhere over his shoulder, his face pale and sick. Judah looks on with a cold, appraising distance, as if watching a necessary but unpleasant task being performed. But Simeon, Levi, and the others, their eyes burn with a triumphant hatred that scorches his soul. "What are you doing?" he gasps, tears starting to well in his eyes. Why? There's no answer, only a rough shove that sends him stumbling forward. They drag him across the dry ground, his feet struggling for purchase. He sees where they are going, towards one of the cisterns, the deep pits dug into the limestone to collect rainwater. But this is the dry season. The cisterns are empty. They are dark, gaping mouths in the earth. The terror that had been a knot in his stomach now explodes in his chest, a frantic bird beating its wings against his ribs. He knows what this means. To be thrown in there is a death sentence. He will starve, or die of thirst, or be found by some wild animal. "No, please," he screams, his voice cracking with terror. He thrashes, trying to break free, but their grip is like iron. "Reuben, Judah, please don't do this. Think of our father. This will kill him." He invokes the name of the one person he thinks can save him, the one person whose love is the source of all this hatred. For a flicker of a second, he sees something break in Reuben's eyes, a spasm of guilt, of pain. But it's not enough. He is too weak, too cowed by the fury of the others. They reach the edge of the cistern. Joseph digs his heels in, his mind screaming, every instinct fighting against the gaping darkness before him. But it's useless. With a final collective heave, they lift him off his feet. For a horrifying moment, he is suspended in the air, his body horizontal to the ground. He sees the hard, unforgiving faces of his brothers, and above them, the vast, indifferent blue of the sky. Then they let go. He falls. The world turns into a blur of motion and rushing air. The light of the sun is snatched away, replaced by an oppressive gloom. He closes his eyes, bracing for the impact, a prayer to the God of his father on his lips. He hits the bottom with a jarring thud that knocks the wind from his lungs. Pain shoots up his leg and through his back. For a long moment, he lies there, stunned, gasping for air, his mind a white-hot blank of shock. Slowly, his senses return, bringing with them a new and terrible reality. The air is cool and damp, smelling of old earth, dust, and something faintly reptilian. It is dark, but not completely. A perfect circle of bright, cruel daylight shines down from above, a hole in the roof of his new world. It is the only connection he has to the life he knew just moments before. He pushes himself up, his body aching. He looks up at that circle of light, and he sees them, their heads silhouetted against the sky, peering down at him. Their faces are distant, unreadable shapes. He is their prisoner. He is their victim. "Brothers," he cries out, his voice echoing unnaturally in the confined space. "Please, let me out. I'm sorry. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Don't leave me here." He pleads, he begs, he reasons. He calls each of them by name, reminding them of shared memories, of their bond as sons of Jacob. His voice, at first strong with desperation, begins to break. Sobs rack his body. The full weight of the betrayal crashes down upon him. This is not a mistake. This is not a prank that has gone too far. This is deliberate. They intend to leave him here to die. These men, who shared his blood, who sat at his father's table, have cast him away into a premature grave. The love he had taken for granted his entire life has been answered with a hatred so profound it has led to this. Above, the silhouettes disappear from the opening. He is alone. The silence that descends is heavier and more terrifying than the fall itself. It is a silence filled with the truth of his abandonment. He presses his back against the rough, curved wall of the cistern. The stone is cool against his skin. He can feel the uneven texture, the grit of the dirt. He runs his hands over the surface, desperately searching for a handhold, a crack, anything that might offer a way out. But the walls are smooth, worn by the rush of water from seasons past. There is no escape. He slumps to the floor, pulling his knees to his chest, making himself as small as possible. The darkness, which had been a gloom, now seems to press in on him, to take on a physical weight. Every shadow seems to move. Every small sound, a pebble dislodged from the wall, the scuttling of some unseen creature in a crevice, is magnified into a source of terror. He thinks of his father, Jacob. What will they tell him? The thought is a fresh wave of agony. His father's grief, his father's pain at his loss, will be immense. And it will be built on a lie, a cruel deception concocted by his own sons. The beautiful coat, now a pile of rags, will be the instrument of that lie. He can almost see the scene, his brothers presenting the torn, bloodied garment, the feigned sorrow on their faces, the shattering of his father's heart. Hours pass, or maybe it is only minutes. Time has no meaning in the dark. There is only the before in the sun and the now in the pit. The circle of light above is his only clock. He watches it, mesmerized. Sometimes a shadow will pass over it, and his heart will leap with a wild, desperate hope. Have they come back? Has Reuben's conscience won? Has Judah had a change of heart? But the shadow always moves on. It is just a cloud or a bird. He thinks of his dreams, the sheaves of grain, the sun, the moon, and the stars. How proud he had been of them, how important they had felt. fool he was. He sees it now with a clarity born of despair. He sees the arrogance in his telling, the smugness they must have heard in his voice. He had not been sharing a divine message. He had been lording his own perceived destiny over them. He had watered the seeds of their resentment with his own pride. His beautiful dreams had led him to this ugly reality. They had seen what comes of his dreams, all right. This pit, this darkness, this is what comes of his dreams. The irony is so bitter it feels like bile in his throat. Above him, in the world of light and air, life goes on with a chilling indifference. The 10 brothers, their violent work done, gather their things. Reuben, his face ashen, argues with them. "We should not have done this," he says, his voice lacking conviction. "We must not shed his blood. Let's just leave him in the cistern. That way, our own hands are clean." He is still clinging to his pathetic, secret plan. To let their anger cool, and then, under the cover of darkness, to come back and pull Joseph out, to return him to their father, and in doing so, redeem himself. It is the plan of a weak man, a man who tries to bargain with evil instead of confronting it. The others agree, not out of mercy, but because Reuben's suggestion offers them a way to achieve their goal without the messy, damning evidence of a direct murder. And then, in one of the most jarring and coldest verses in the entire Bible, the narrator tells us what they did next. Then they sat down to eat their meal. They sit not far from the cistern, and they unwrap their bread and their cheese. They pass a waterskin from man to man. The sounds of their eating, their quiet conversation, would be just faint enough to drift down to Joseph in his prison, a tormenting reminder of the ordinary life that has been stolen from him. They eat as if they have just completed a hard morning's work, which, in a way, they have. The business of destroying a life, of disposing of a brother, is finished. Now it is time for lunch. Simeon and Levi are probably triumphant, their rage finally spent, replaced by a grim satisfaction. They have restored what they see as the proper order of things. The dreamer is silenced. The favorite is brought low. Others are likely more subdued, the adrenaline fatting, leaving behind a hollow unease. They avoid looking at the cistern. They talk about the flocks, the quality of the grazing, the journey home. They talk about anything and everything except the 17-year-old boy buried alive just a few yards away. They are trying to build a new reality with their words, a world in which Joseph no longer exists, a world in which they are not monsters. Reuben cannot eat. The bread tastes like dust in his mouth. He keeps glancing towards the cistern, his mind in turmoil. He is the eldest. He should have stopped them. He should have been stronger. But their hatred was a force of nature, a flash flood he was powerless to stand against. Now he is complicit, his silence a form of consent. His only hope is his secret plan, his flimsy scheme of a nighttime rescue. He prays they will move on soon, so he can put his plan into action. It is Judah who breaks the fragile peace. He has been watching the horizon, his practical mind already working through the consequences of their actions. He is less driven by the hot-blooded passion of Simeon and Levi, and more by a cold, hard logic. leaving Joseph in the pit is a messy solution. What if a stranger finds him? What if he somehow escapes? What if he dies, and his blood is still, metaphorically, on their hands, a stain upon the land and upon their souls? His eyes, accustomed to scanning the vast distances of the wilderness, catch a flicker of movement far to the south, on the trade route that leads to Egypt. A caravan. He recognizes it instantly. A train of camels laden with goods, making its slow way through the valley. An idea begins to form in his mind. An idea that is both more merciful and infinitely more cruel than leaving Joseph to die. What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Judah says to the others, his voice low and reasonable. The question hangs in the air. He has their attention. Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him after all. He is our brother, our own flesh and blood. It is a masterful piece of rhetoric. He appeals to their greed. What will we gain? He appeals to their conscience, such as it is. Let's not lay our hands on him. And he wraps it all in the twisted logic of family loyalty. He is our brother, our own flesh and blood. The implication is clear. We won't kill him, we'll just sell him. We will remove him from our lives forever, and we will even profit from it. It's a clean solution. No blood, no body, no guilt. Just a business transaction. The brothers, their initial bloodlust satisfied, are receptive. It sounds like a good plan. It's efficient. It's final. It absolves them. They can get rid of Joseph and get paid for it. Reuben is not there for this conversation. Perhaps he has walked away, unable to bear their company, lost in his own anxious thoughts. So the 9 remaining brothers agree. Judah's cold pragmatism has won the day. Down in the pit, Joseph hears something. A change in the sounds from above. The faint murmur of their voices had been a constant, torturous presence. Now, there is a new sound, a rumbling, a shuffling, and then the sound he has been praying for. The sound of the large stone cap being rolled away from the mouth of the cistern. Light floods the pit. It is so bright, so sudden, that he has to shield his eyes. Hope, fierce and blinding, surges through him. They've changed their minds. They're letting him out. He scrambles to his feet, his heart pounding with relief. A rope snakes down towards him. He grabs onto it, his hands raw, and he feels it go taut as they begin to pull him up. He rises from the grave, emerging back into the world of the living. He blinks in the harsh sunlight, his eyes struggling to adjust. He sees his brothers' faces, and he opens his mouth to thank them, to promise them he will be better, that he has learned his lesson. But the words die on his lips, because behind his brothers he sees them. Strangers, men with dark skin and foreign clothes, their faces hard and unsmiling. And camels, dozens of them, laden with sacks of gum, balm, and myrrh. His heart sinks. This is not a rescue. He is hauled over the edge and thrown onto the ground at the feet of the traders. He looks up at his brothers, his mind reeling in confusion. What is happening? Judah steps forward and begins to speak with the leader of the caravan, a tall man with a shrewd, calculating gaze. They haggle. They gesture towards Joseph. Joseph watches, uncomprehending, as if he is watching a play. This cannot be real. Then he hears it, a sound that will haunt his nightmares for the rest of his life. The clink of metal against metal. The sound of silver coins being counted out. 20 shekels of silver. The price of a slave. The price of a brother. The leader of the caravan nods, satisfied. 2 of his men come forward and grab Joseph, their grip rough and impersonal. They tie his hands in front of him with a coarse rope that bites into his wrists. It is done. The transaction is complete. He has been sold. He is no longer Joseph, the son of Jacob. He is property. He belongs to these strangers. He looks at his brothers one last time, a silent, desperate appeal. Judah avoids his gaze, his face a mask of grim resolve. Simeon looks triumphant. Most of the others just look away, unable to face the reality of what they have done. They have their silver. They have their peace. They turn their backs on him. He is pulled along, forced to walk behind a camel. The caravan begins to move, slowly at first, then picking up a steady pace. With every step, he is being taken further from everything he has ever known. He looks back over his shoulder. He can see his brothers gathering the flocks. They are moving on, heading home. He can still see the familiar hills, the landscape of his childhood. But it is receding. The figures of his brothers grow smaller and smaller until they are just specks in the distance. And then they are gone. He is alone, a captive in a sea of strangers, bound for a foreign land called Egypt, a place he knows only from stories. The rope chafes his wrists. The dust of the road cakes his face, mixing with the silent tears that stream from his eyes. The sun beats down. The shock is beginning to wear off, replaced by a cold, fathomless despair. In the space of a single afternoon, he has lost everything. His coat, his freedom, his family, his future. He was sold by a brother and bought by a stranger. The darkness of the pit was terrifying. But this journey into the unknown, into a life of slavery, is a new and even more profound kind of darkness. He has been utterly and completely betrayed, and the life he knew is over. The journey south is a blur of rhythmic misery. Joseph walks, his hands bound, the rope a constant, abrasive reminder of his new reality. He is tethered to a line of other souls bought and sold, a human chain of misfortune being dragged towards the great, hungry maw of Egypt, the landscape of his home, the familiar, rolling hills of Canaan dotted with the terebinth and oak trees of his youth, gives way to the harsh, gravelly plains of the Negev, and then to the vast, terrifying emptiness of the Sinai desert. The sun is no longer the familiar, life-giving orb he knew. It is a merciless tyrant, beating down from a white-hot sky, baking the earth and searing his skin. The nights are just as cruel, a sudden, shocking cold that seeps into his bones, offering no real comfort, only a different kind of suffering. He learns the language of slavery without being taught a single word. It is a language of the body, of survival. He learns to walk at the precise pace that avoids a lash from the guard's whip. He learns to accept the meager portion of stale bread and brackish water without complaint. He learns to be invisible, to draw no attention, to keep his head down and his eyes on the dusty heels of the person in front of him. His mind, once filled with vibrant dreams and the easy confidence of a beloved son, becomes a fortress. He retreats deep inside himself, building walls to withstand the daily onslaught of degradation. During the long, monotonous days of walking, he replays the betrayal. He sees his brothers' faces, their eyes hard with a hatred he still cannot fully comprehend. He feels the phantom tear of his coat being ripped from his body. He feels the sickening lurch of the fall into the pit. He tastes the dust. He hears the clink of the 20 silver coins. He plays it over and over again, not out of a desire for revenge, but in a desperate attempt to understand. How could it have happened? What had he done that was so unforgivable? The questions circle endlessly, vultures in the desert of his mind, finding no answers, only the raw, gaping wound of his abandonment. At night, huddled against the cold with other nameless, faceless slaves, he thinks of his father. This is the sharpest pain, a pain so acute it makes him gasp in the darkness. He imagines Jacob, his old face etched with a grief that will never heal. He pictures his father, day after day, looking down the road, waiting for a son who will never return. The lie his brothers concocted is a poison that is not only destroying Joseph's life, but his father's as well. The weight of his father's sorrow is in many ways heavier to bear than his own bondage. In these moments of profound loneliness, he speaks to the God of his father. They are not eloquent prayers. They are the broken, whispered cries of a lost child. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, where are you? Have you forgotten me? There is no booming voice from heaven, no pillar of fire to guide him. There is only the sigh of the desert wind and the cold indifference of the stars. Yet, in the quiet act of speaking into the void, a tiny, resilient seed of faith holds fast in the barren soil of his heart. After what feels like an eternity, the landscape changes again. The oppressive beige of the desert gives way to a shocking, vibrant green. He smells it before he sees it, the rich, fertile scent of wet earth, of life. The Nile, Egypt. The caravan enters a world unlike anything he could have imagined. It is a place of overwhelming scale and energy. Towering monuments scrape the sky. Temples covered in strange, painted symbols gleam in the sun. The river itself is a bustling highway of boats with painted eyes and tall white sails. And the people, so many people. They swarm the streets, their voices a chaotic symphony in a language he doesn't understand. Their skin darker, their clothes alien, their eyes lined with black coal. It is magnificent and terrifying. Joseph, the boy from the quiet pastures of Canaan, is an insignificant speck in this sprawling, powerful civilization. They arrive in Avaris, the great capital of the Hyksos rulers of Egypt, and he is herded with the others into the slave market. The experience is the final, brutal act of his dehumanization. He is shoved onto a raised platform, a piece of merchandise on display. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and unwashed bodies, mixed with the exotic scents of spices from the nearby market stalls. Potential buyers walk past, their faces impassive. They look at him with the same detached assessment one would give a horse or an ox. A man with rough hands pries open his mouth to inspect his teeth. Another squeezes his arms and legs, testing his muscle. They discuss his merits and flaws in their guttural tongue, their words meaningless to him, but their intent perfectly clear. He is no longer a person. He is an object, an investment. Kepheneth pass him, a valuable commodity. The irony is a razor blade in his soul. He has gone from being a boy in a coat of many colors to a boy being sold for a pocketful of silver. He stands there for what feels like hours, enduring the pokes, the prods, the humiliating inspections. He keeps his gaze fixed on a distant point, his face a stony mask, his spirit withdrawn to the only place they cannot touch. And then, a man of clear importance arrives. The crowd of buyers parts for him instinctively. He is flanked by soldiers in bronze helmets and leather armor. The man himself is tall and broad-shouldered, his head shaved in the Egyptian style, his jaw strong and square. He wears a fine white linen kilt and a heavy, ornate collar of gold and lapis lazuli. There is an aura of power and authority about him that is unmistakable. This is Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's personal guard. He is the chief executioner, the head of national security for the most powerful kingdom on earth. He is a man who deals in life and death every single day. Potiphar's eyes, sharp and intelligent, scan the slaves on the block. They pass over Joseph, then return lingering. He steps forward. He does not poke or prod. He simply looks. What does he see? Perhaps he sees more than just a strong back and healthy teeth. Perhaps in the boy's defiant posture, in the intelligent light that still burns in his eyes despite the despair, he sees something different, something of value beyond mere physical labor, a spark of character, a hint of noble bearing. He speaks a few sharp words to the slave trader. A price is named. Potiphar does not haggle. He nods. The deal is done. Joseph is led off the block, his ownership transferred from the Ishmaelite traders to this powerful, imposing Egyptian. His life in Egypt has begun. Potiphar's estate is a world unto itself, a sprawling complex of buildings, gardens, and courtyards, all surrounded by a high mud brick wall. It is a place of immense wealth and order. Joseph is given a simple servant's tunic and put to work at the bottom of a vast, intricate hierarchy of household staff. His first tasks are the most menial. He scrubs stone floors. He hauls water from the well under the hot sun. He cleans out the stables. The work is grueling, repetitive, and anonymous. He is just one of many slaves, lost in the machinery of a great house. In these early days, the despair is a constant companion, a heavy cloak he cannot take off. Every night, he collapses onto his sleeping mat, his body aching, his heart hollow with a loneliness so profound it feels like a physical illness. But a strange thing begins to happen. The seed of faith that had survived the desert journey begins to sprout. He cannot change his circumstances. He cannot go home. He is a slave, will likely die a slave, but he can choose how he lives within those circumstances. He can choose how he performs the tasks set before him. So he makes a choice. If he must scrub a floor, he will make it the cleanest floor in the entire estate. If he must haul water, he will do it without complaint, ensuring the cisterns are always full. If he must work in the stables, he will treat the animals with a gentle care that even they seem to recognize. He does his work with a quiet diligence, an integrity that is woven into the very fabric of his being. He does not work to impress. He works because it is the work that is before him to do. This, the story tells us, is the first sign that the Lord was with Joseph. It is not a dramatic, supernatural intervention. It is a quiet strength, a resilience of character, a spirit of excellence that shines even in the darkest, most menial of situations. God has not removed him from the furnace of affliction, but he is with him in it, and people begin to notice. The other slaves, at first wary of the foreign newcomer, see his steadfastness. The overseers, accustomed to lazy, resentful workers, are struck by his efficiency and his honesty. Word begins to drift up the chain of command. This Hebrew boy, he is different. Potiphar, a man whose success depends on his ability to judge character, certainly notices. He sees the results. The floors are cleaner. The accounts for the feed in the stables are more accurate. There is a subtle but discernible improvement in the efficiency of the household. He starts giving Joseph small, new responsibilities. He asks him to oversee the distribution of grain to the kitchens. Joseph organizes it brilliantly, eliminating waste and ensuring nothing is stolen. Potiphar then puts him in charge of the gardens. Under Joseph's care, the gardens flourish as never before, producing an abundance of fruits and vegetables. With each new success, Potiphar's trust grows. He sees that Joseph is not only hardworking, but also incredibly intelligent and blessed with a unique gift for administration. Everything the boy touches seems to prosper. The Bible frames this in theological terms. The Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. Potiphar experiences this in practical terms. His household runs more smoothly. His fields produce more. His livestock are healthier. His entire estate is flourishing. For a shrewd man like Potiphar, the conclusion is simple. This Hebrew is the source of his good fortune. The promotion, when it comes, is swift and absolute. Potiphar calls Joseph to his office, a grand room with painted walls and expensive furniture. Joseph, who had arrived years earlier as a terrified, bedraggled boy, now stands before his master as a confident young man, fluent in the Egyptian language and knowledgeable in the ways of a great household. From this day forward, Potiphar declares, "You are the overseer of my entire house. Everything I own is in your hands. You will manage my staff, my accounts, my fields, my livestock. I will concern myself with nothing except the food I eat. My house is your house." It is a staggering rise, from slave to CEO. Joseph is given fine linen clothes to wear, not as ornate as the coat his brothers tore from him, but a the uniform of high office nonetheless. He is no longer one of the anonymous many, but the single most powerful person in the estate, next to Potiphar himself. He moves from the servants' quarters into his own comfortable rooms. He dines on good food. He is treated with respect. He has found a measure of success, of stability, even of peace in this foreign land. The wounds of his past have not vanished, but they have scarred over. The nightmares come less frequently. He has built a new life, a good life, on the ashes of the old one. He has proven himself faithful in small things, and now he has been entrusted with great things. For a time, it seems his suffering is over, but new heights bring new dangers. Joseph has grown into a remarkably handsome young man. His success gives him an aura of confidence and authority that only adds to his appeal. And in the great house, there is someone else who has been watching his ascent, not with an eye for his administrative skills, but with an eye of an entirely different sort. Potiphar's wife. The Bible gives her no name. She is defined only by her relationship to her husband. She is a woman of high status, living a life of pampered luxury. Her days are filled with empty hours, her heart, perhaps, with a quiet loneliness. Her husband is a man of great importance, his time consumed by the affairs of Pharaoh and the security of the state. He is often away, and even when he is home, his mind is likely elsewhere. She lives in a gilded cage, beautiful and bored. And then there is Joseph, this handsome, capable, foreign steward who runs her home with such effortless grace. At first, she notices him as one notices a particularly beautiful piece of furniture or a striking work of art. He is pleasing to look at. Then, she begins to observe him more closely. She sees the way the other servants respect him. She sees the quiet authority in his posture, the intelligence in his eyes. He is not like the other slaves, nor is he like the indolent Egyptian nobles she knows. There is a depth to him, a core of integrity that she finds both intriguing and intensely attractive. Her idle admiration begins to curdle into something more dangerous, desire. Her campaign of seduction is not sudden. It begins subtly. A lingering look as he passes her in the garden. A soft smile when he comes to give his daily report. She starts to create reasons for him to be near her, summoning him to her private chambers to move a piece of furniture or to consult on the household linens. These are tasks far below the station of the chief steward, and they both know it. It is a game, a test. She is drawing him into her sphere, into a world of scented oils, soft silks, and suggestive glances. Joseph is not naive. He understands what is happening. He feels the shift in the air whenever she is near. He sees the invitation in her eyes, and he is deeply troubled. He is in an impossible position. This is the wife of his master, the man who rescued him from the slave market, who trusted him, who promoted him, who gave him everything. To betray that trust would be an act of profound ingratitude. But to refuse the advances of this powerful woman could be just as dangerous. A spurned woman of her status could destroy him with a single word. For a time, he tries to manage the situation through avoidance. He makes his reports as brief as possible. He ensures another servant is always present when he must attend to her. He is polite, respectful, but distant. He tries to erect a professional wall around himself, hoping she will understand and desist. But his coolness only seems to inflame her desire. Her obsession grows. Finally, she casts aside all subtlety. One day, when she finds him alone, she looks him directly in the eye and says the words he has been dreading. Lie with me. The command is stark, stripped of all pretense. It is not an invitation. It is an order from a superior to a subordinate. She expects him to comply. He is her husband's property in her mind. That makes him her property, too. In this moment, Joseph faces a choice that will define his character. Everything he has worked for, his position, his comfort, his very life, is on the line. The easiest path, the path of self-preservation, would be to give in. Who would ever know? Potiphar would be none the wiser. But Joseph has a moral compass that points to a fixed, unchangeable north. He refuses. And his refusal is not just a simple no. It is a masterclass in moral reasoning. Look, he says to her, his voice firm but respectful. My master trusts me with everything in his house. He has put everything he owns in my charge. There is no one in this house greater than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. He begins by affirming his loyalty to Potiphar. He acknowledges the immense trust he has been given, and he will not violate it. This is a betrayal he will not commit. Then he makes it personal. How then could I do this great wickedness? He frames the act not as a moment of pleasure, but as a great wickedness. He is appealing to a universal standard of right and wrong. He is defining himself by his own integrity. This is not who I am, he is saying. Finally, he brings it to the highest court of appeal. And sin against God. For Joseph, this is the ultimate bottom line. His allegiance is not just to his earthly master, Potiphar, but to his heavenly master, God. An act of adultery would be a sin against the woman, a betrayal of his master, but most importantly, a violation of his relationship with the God who has been with him, even in this foreign land. It is a powerful, three-pronged defense. Loyalty to his master, loyalty to his own character, and loyalty to his God. He has made his position unequivocally clear. But a woman in the grip of obsession does not listen to reason. His refusal is not an obstacle. It is a challenge. It wounds her pride. The fact that this slave, this foreigner, would dare to refuse her, to lecture her on morality, is an intolerable insult. Her desire now mixes with a new and volatile emotion, rage. She does not give up. The Bible says, day after day she spoke to Joseph. It becomes a relentless siege. She badgers him, she pleads, she commands, she tempts. Joseph continues to refuse. The beautiful estate, which had become a sanctuary for him, now feels like a prison of a different kind. He is a man under constant pressure, walking a tightrope with a deadly fall on either side. The crisis comes to a head on a day like any other. It is a festival day, perhaps, and most of the household staff have gone out to the city. Potiphar is on duty with Pharaoh. The house is quiet, almost empty. Joseph goes about his duties, attending to the household accounts inside the main house, and she sees her opportunity. He enters a room, and she is there waiting for him. There is no one else around, no witnesses, no interruptions. This is her chance. She confronts him, her eyes burning with a desperate fire. She doesn't speak. She acts. She grabs hold of his garment, his outer tunic, the symbol of his stewardship. "Lie with me," she says again, her voice a low, urgent hiss. In that moment, history echoes. Once before, his garment had been seized by those who meant him harm. His brothers had stripped him of his coat before throwing him into the pit. Now, this woman strips him of his tunic in an attempt to pull him into a different kind of pit, a pit of moral compromise and sin. But Joseph is not the same boy who was ambushed in Dothan. He has learned from his suffering. He knows he cannot win a direct confrontation. He cannot reason with her. He cannot fight her. So he does the only thing he can. He flees. He makes a choice in a split second. He slips out of the garment, leaving it in her hand, and he runs. He runs out of the room, out of the house, choosing to lose his position, his reputation, his everything, rather than lose his integrity. He leaves behind the symbol of his earthly success to save his spiritual honor. It is an act of incredible strength and moral courage. She is left standing there, her face a mask of shock and fury. In her hand, she holds the evidence of his presence, his tunic. Her desire instantly curdles into pure, venomous hatred. He has not just refused her, he has humiliated her. He has escaped, leaving her alone with her shame and her rage. And she knows, with the cold certainty of a cornered animal, that she must destroy him before he can destroy her. Her mind races, constructing the lie. She begins to scream, a calculated performance of terror and outrage. The few remaining servants come running. "Look," she cries, holding up the garment as evidence. "This Hebrew slave, the one my husband brought here, he came in to mock me. He tried to lie with me, and I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he ran out of the house and left his garment behind." She twists the narrative completely. His flight becomes a sign of his guilt. His discarded tunic becomes the proof of her story. She plays the part of the virtuous, violated wife perfectly. When Potiphar returns home that evening, she repeats the performance for him, her voice filled with tears and indignation. "This is how your slave treated me," she says, presenting him with the tunic. Potiphar listens, his face growing dark. He looks at his weeping wife. He looks at the garment of the man he had trusted completely. The Bible says his anger burned, but against whom? On the surface, it is against Joseph for this ultimate act of betrayal. He had welcomed this foreigner into his home, raised him up, and was repaid with an assault on his wife, the deepest violation of a man's honor. He must act. His reputation, his authority, depends on it. And yet, his action is strangely restrained. For the crime of assaulting the wife of the captain of the guard, the expected punishment would be immediate, brutal, and fatal. But Potiphar doesn't execute Joseph. He doesn't have him maimed or tortured. he has him thrown into prison. Specifically, the prison where the king's prisoners were kept. It is a secure, serious prison, but it is not a death sentence. Is it possible that Potiphar, the expert judge of character, had a sliver of doubt? Did he know his wife's character, her frustrations, her capacity for drama? Did he look at the story and see the holes? A man attacking a woman would tear her clothes, not leave his own behind. We'll never know for sure, but his decision to imprison Joseph rather than kill him leaves a door open, a glimmer of possibility in the dark. For Joseph, the distinction is meaningless. The heavy door of the royal prison clangs shut behind him. He is in a pit once more. He has gone from the pit in Dothan to the pinnacle of Potiphar's house, and now down again into the darkness of an Egyptian dungeon. And this time, it is worse. The first time, he was a victim of his brother's jealousy and his own youthful arrogance. This time, he is a victim of his own integrity. He did the right thing. He honored his master and his God, and his reward is to be thrown into chains, falsely accused, his name ruined, his future destroyed. It is a profound injustice, a test of faith that would shatter most people. As he sits in the cold, damp darkness of the prison cell, the question he whispered in the desert must have returned with the force of a roar. My God, where are you now? The prison door clangs shut, and the sound is one of dreadful finality. The light of the outside world is gone, replaced by the gloomy twilight of a dungeon, a place that smells of damp stone, human misery, and despair. Joseph is once again in a pit, but this one is deeper, darker, and more hopeless than the cistern in Dothan. In the cistern, there was still a sliver of hope that his brothers might relent. Here, there is no hope. He has been condemned by the word of a powerful man, his reputation destroyed by a lie. He is surrounded by the forgotten men of the kingdom, political prisoners, disgraced officials, men who have crossed Pharaoh and are now paying the price. The air is thick with their bitterness and their brokenness. For any normal person, this would be the end. This is the point where the spirit breaks, where the soul curls up and dies. He has been a victim of jealousy, and now he is a victim of his own integrity. The universe seems not just indifferent, but actively hostile. Doing the right thing has led him to a place of punishment. There is no justice. There is no fairness. There is only the cold, hard reality of his chains. He could have surrendered to the darkness. He could have become like the other prisoners, a ghost haunting the corridors of his own regret, his heart growing as hard as the stones around him. But the story makes a remarkable statement. The same quiet, powerful refrain we heard in Potiphar's house. But the Lord was with Joseph. Again, there are no bolts of lightning, no angelic visitations. God's presence is not a key that magically unlocks the prison door. It is an internal fire that refuses to be extinguished. It is a stubborn, resilient grace that operates in the heart of a man who refuses to be defined by his circumstances. And so the pattern repeats itself, a testament to the consistency of Joseph's character. He does not rail against his fate. He does not spend his days slumped in a corner. lost in self-pity. He begins to see. He sees the despair in the eyes of the other prisoners. He sees the inefficiency in the way the guards distribute the meager rations. He sees the warden, a man overwhelmed by the grim responsibility of his job. And he begins to do what he has always done. He works. He serves. He brings order out of chaos. He starts by talking to the other prisoners, learning their stories, offering a word of comfort where he can. He helps organize the distribution of food, ensuring it is done fairly. He notices a prisoner who is ill and makes sure he gets water. His quiet competence, his unshakable integrity, and his genuine empathy begin to shine like a lamp in the gloom. He asks for nothing, but he gives what he has, his administrative skill and his humane spirit. The chief jailer, like Potiphar before him, begins to notice. He sees that this Hebrew prisoner is not like the others. There is a light in him, a reliability that is rare in any man, let alone one in such dire straits. The warden, burdened by his duties, starts to delegate. First, a small task, then another. Soon, just as it happened in Potiphar's house, the jailer entrusts everything into Joseph's hands. The warden paid no attention to anything that was under Joseph's care, the scripture says, because the Lord was with him and gave him success in whatever he did. It is a breathtaking statement. Joseph, the prisoner, becomes the functional warden of the prison. He runs the very institution that holds him captive. He has turned his prison into his parish, his cell into his office. He is still in chains, but he is no longer a prisoner of his circumstances. His life settles into this strange, new routine. And then, one day, the prison population grows by two very important inmates, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and his chief baker. In the paranoid world of an ancient royal court, falling out of favor was a terrifyingly swift and often fatal event. For some unstated offense, these two men, who had once held positions of immense intimacy and trust with the king, now find themselves in the same dungeon as Joseph. Because Joseph is in charge, the warden assigns them to his personal care. One morning, Joseph comes to them and sees that they are dejected, their faces etched with a profound anxiety. He doesn't just see two prisoners, he sees two troubled human beings. His first words to them are a beautiful expression of his empathetic heart. Why do you look so sad today? He has every reason in the world to be absorbed in his own sorrow. Yet his first instinct is to inquire about theirs. They tell him the source of their distress. We both had dreams, they say, but there is no one to interpret them. In the dream-obsessed culture of Egypt, an uninterpreted dream was a source of great anxiety, a locked box of divine information that held the key to one's fate. A flicker of the old Joseph, the boy who was so fascinated by dreams, comes to life. But he is a different man now. The arrogant youth is gone, replaced by a man of profound humility, tempered by years of suffering. He does not say, I can interpret them. Instead, he deflects the glory. Do not interpretations belong to God, he says. Tell me your dreams. The chief cupbearer goes first. In my dream, he says, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and gave the cup to him. Joseph listens, and as he does, the meaning unfolds in his mind with a divine clarity. "This is what it means," he says without hesitation. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do." It is news of incredible joy, of restoration and life. The cupbearer's face floods with relief. But before the man can celebrate, Joseph makes a plea. It is the cry of a man who has been unjustly imprisoned for years, a man who sees a single, fragile opportunity for his own release. "But when all goes well with you," he says, his voice thick with a desperate hope, "remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." Then the chief baker, emboldened by the positive interpretation, eagerly shares his own dream. "I too had a dream," he says. "On my head were 3 baskets of white bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." Joseph listens, and the divine clarity comes again. But this time it is a message of terrible finality. He does not soften the blow. He speaks the truth as it has been revealed to him. "This is what it means," he says, his voice perhaps softer now, full of a sad gravity. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat away your flesh. 3 days later, it happens exactly as Joseph had foretold. It is Pharaoh's birthday, a time for feasting and for rendering judgments. The chief cupbearer is restored to his post, and he once again places the cup in Pharaoh's hand. The chief baker is executed, his body hung for the birds to devour. Joseph's connection to the divine is confirmed. His plea to the cupbearer hangs in the air, a single thread of hope cast out from the darkness of his cell. But the story delivers a swift and brutal blow. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph, he forgot him. This, in many ways, is a third betrayal, a betrayal born not of malice or lust, but of simple, selfish indifference. The cupbearer, restored to the luxury and intrigue of the royal court, caught up in his own good fortune, simply forgets the man in the dungeon who gave him the good news. The thread of hope snaps, and Joseph is left to wait. 2 full years pass, 2 more years in the dungeon. This is perhaps the cruelest test of all, to be given a glimpse of hope, only to have it snatched away and replaced by a crushing silence. Every day for 730 days, he must have woken up with a flicker of anticipation. Will today be the day the cupbearer remembers? And every night, he must have gone to sleep with the familiar weight of disappointment. These 2 years are a silent crucible. They burn away the last vestiges of his reliance on men. He learns the hard, painful lesson that human memory is fallible and human gratitude is fleeting. His hope can no longer be in princes or in cupbearers. It must be in God alone. This period of being forgotten is what forges the final layer of his character, a patient, steadfast endurance. Then, after 2 long years, a monarch has a bad night's sleep. Pharaoh, the living God, the absolute ruler of the most powerful nation on earth, has 2 dreams that leave him deeply shaken. He summons all the magicians of Egypt, all the wise men, the priests, the sorcerers. He tells them his dreams, but no one can interpret them. The entire spiritual and intellectual infrastructure of the Egyptian empire is powerless before these divine riddles. The court is in a state of panic. An anxious pharaoh is a danger to everyone. It is in this moment of national crisis that the cupbearer's memory is finally jogged. "Today I remember my failings," he says to Pharaoh, his voice trembling. He tells the story of his time in prison, of the young Hebrew slave who interpreted his dream, and the baker. With perfect accuracy, Pharaoh, desperate for an answer, does not hesitate. "Send for him," he commands. And so, the machinery of the state, which had forgotten Joseph for so long, now moves with incredible speed. Guards rush to the prison. Joseph is brought out of the dungeon. He is no longer the boy who was thrown into the pit, nor the young man who ran from Potiphar's wife. He is now 30 years old, a man who has spent more than a decade of his life in servitude and imprisonment. He is a man hardened by suffering, yet whose spirit remains unbroken. They shave him, as is the Egyptian custom, and give him clean clothes. He is being prepared for an audience with a god. He is led into the throne room of Pharaoh. It is a place of overwhelming grandeur, of towering pillars and painted walls, of gold and incense, and the palpable aura of absolute power. Pharaoh sits on his throne, adorned as a living deity. Joseph, who just moments before was a forgotten prisoner, now stands before the most powerful man in the world. "I have had a dream," Pharaoh says, his voice echoing in the great hall, "and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Here is the moment. Here is his chance." The old Joseph would have seized the credit, but the man who stands before Pharaoh is the product of the pit, the household, and the prison. He is a man who knows where his gift comes from. "I cannot do it," Joseph replies, his voice steady and calm, filled with a humility that is the exact opposite of arrogance. But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. Pharaoh, likely impressed by this response, proceeds to tell his dreams. "I was standing on the bank of the Nile," he begins, "when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows came up scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. But even after they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before. Then I woke up." He continues, "In my second dream, I saw 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me. Joseph listens, and the meaning is revealed to him, clear as day. The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same, he declares with quiet authority. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. He lays out the prophecy with stunning clarity. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. But Joseph does not stop there. This is where he demonstrates that he is more than just a dreamer or an interpreter. He is a leader. He is a strategist. He makes an audacious leap from spiritual interpretation to practical policy. And now he continues, addressing the most powerful man on earth as a consultant. Let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. It is a brilliant, comprehensive plan, delivered with absolute confidence. There is a stunned silence in the throne room. Pharaoh looks at this Hebrew, this former slave, and he sees not a prisoner, but a savior. He sees a man in whom the divine spirit clearly dwells. He turns to his officials. Can we find anyone like this man? He asks, his voice filled with awe. One in whom is the Spirit of God. He turns back to Joseph. Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. In an instant, Joseph's entire world is turned upside down once more. Pharaoh removes the royal signet ring from his own finger and places it on Joseph's. This ring is the symbol of the king's authority. Its impression on a clay tablet is law. He dresses Joseph in robes of fine linen and puts a gold chain around his neck. He has him ride in the 2nd royal chariot, with runners ahead of him shouting, "Make way." Joseph, the Hebrew slave, the forgotten prisoner, is now the vizier of Egypt, the 2nd most powerful man in the world. He is given a new Egyptian name, Zaphnath-Pani, meaning something like God speaks and he lives, or the revealer of secrets. He is given an Egyptian wife, Asenath, the daughter of a high priest from the sacred city of On. He is fully assimilated, remade into an Egyptian prince. The 7 years of abundance come, just as he prophesied. And Joseph is not idle. He travels throughout the land, overseeing the collection of the grain. He builds massive granaries, filling them to bursting, so much grain that they stop trying to keep records. During this time of prosperity and power, his wife bears him 2 sons. He names his firstborn Manasseh, which means making to forget. For God, he says, has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. He is actively trying to sever the connection to his painful past. He names his second son Ephraim, meaning fruitfulness. For God, he says, has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. His new identity is complete. He is no longer Joseph, the betrayed shepherd boy. He is Zaphnath-Paneah, the fruitful Egyptian lord who has forgotten the house of his father. Then the 7 years of plenty end, and the 7 years of famine begin. The crops fail. The earth turns to dust, and hunger, a gaunt and terrifying specter, begins to stalk not just Egypt, but all the surrounding lands. But Egypt is ready. The granaries are opened. The world comes to Egypt to buy grain, and the famine grips the land of Canaan. Jacob and his sons, once wealthy patriarchs, are now facing starvation. The old man, his heart still heavy with the grief for the son he believes was torn apart by wild beasts, hears that there is grain in Egypt. He turns to his remaining sons. "Why do you just keep looking at each other?" he asks them. "Go down to Egypt and buy grain for us there, so that we may live and not die." So the 10 brothers, the men who once stood over a pit deciding a boy's fate, now set out on a journey to beg for food. They arrive in Egypt, a land of strange gods and overwhelming power, and they are directed to the office of the great vizier, who controls all the grain sales. They are ushered into his presence. They see a man on a high seat, dressed in fine Egyptian linens, his face framed by the kohl-lined eyes and shaved head of an Egyptian noble. He is the Lord of life and death in this time of famine, and in accordance with custom, and out of a desperate need, they bow down before him, their faces touching the cold, stone floor. Joseph looks down from his seat of power, and he sees them. 10 dusty, travel-worn shepherds from Canaan. Their faces are older now, lined with worry and hard living, but he knows them. He knows every single one of them. In an instant, the carefully constructed walls of Zaphnath-Paneah, the Egyptian lord, come crashing down. He is no longer the man who has forgotten. He is Joseph, the boy they sold for 20 pieces of silver. The dream of the sheaves, the dream that set this whole, terrible, wonderful story in motion, has just come true. A tidal wave of emotion crashes over him. The shock is so profound he can barely breathe. The pain, the anger, the grief he had buried for 20 years erupts to the surface. He wants to scream at them. He wants to reveal himself and watch the terror dawn in their eyes. He wants to mete out the justice he has so long been denied. His first instinct is vengeance, but he looks at them prostrate on the floor, and something else stirs within him. They are not the arrogant, cruel men of his memory. They are desperate, hungry, and humbled. He sees them, and he is a stranger to them. He has all the power. And in that moment, a question forms in his heart, a question more important than revenge. Have they changed? Are they still the same men who would sacrifice a brother to soothe their own jealousy? Or have 20 years of living with their guilt and the slow grief of their father changed them? He makes a decision. He will not reveal himself. Not yet. He will test them. He speaks to them harshly, his voice cold and imperious, using an interpreter to maintain the illusion. You are spies, he accuses them, the charge a death sentence. You have come to see where our land is unprotected. They are terrified. They fall over themselves to profess their innocence. No, my lord, they stammer. Your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. We are honest men, not spies. He presses them, forcing them to tell him their family story. They tell him of their old father in Canaan, and of a brother who is dead, and of the youngest brother, Benjamin, who is at home with his father. Every word is a knife in Joseph's heart. He, the dead brother, is sitting right in front of them. And Benjamin, the other son of his mother, Rachel, is he safe? Or has their jealousy found a new target? He devises a test, a cruel test designed to probe the depths of their character. This is how I will test you, he announces. You will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. One of you is to go and get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison. Then I will know if your story is true. He throws them all in prison for 3 days, giving them a small taste of the fate they had so casually dealt to him. On the 3rd day, he modifies the plan. Do this and you will live, for I fear God, he says, a statement full of deep irony. Let one of your brothers stay here in prison, while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me. He chooses Simeon, one of the most violent of the group, to be the hostage. The brothers, conversing among themselves in Hebrew, not realizing the vizier understands every word, are consumed with guilt. Surely we are being punished because of our brother, they say to one another. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come upon us. Reuben chimes in. Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood. Joseph, standing just feet away, hears this, and it breaks him. He has to turn away to leave the room, so they do not see the tears streaming down his face. For the first time, he has evidence that they are not the same men. They are living with their guilt. They are capable of remorse. But the test is not over. The true test revolves around Benjamin. Will they protect the new favorite son? Will they risk everything for him? Or will they abandon him, just as they abandoned Joseph? He returns, his face composed, binds Simeon before their eyes, and sends them on their way, their sacks filled with grain, and with their money secretly returned. The ghosts of the past have returned, and Joseph, the master of Egypt, is now a man caught in a storm of his own making, torn between the bitter satisfaction of retribution and the first painful stirrings of grace. The journey home is a silent one, heavy with a dread that is thicker than the dust of the road. The sacks of grain the very object of their quest, feel less like a source of life and more like a curse. Each brother is lost in his own vortex of fear and confusion. They had faced the powerful vizier of Egypt and survived, but at what cost? Simeon is a hostage in a foreign prison, and they have been given an impossible command: to bring Benjamin, their father's precious, fragile Benjamin, back to this formidable war. To make matters worse, as they stopped for the night, and one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey, he found his money, every shekel sitting right on top of the grain. A shock of pure terror went through them. This was not a kindness. In the economy of their fear, it could only be a trap, a deliberate ploy to accuse them of theft on their return. Their guilt over what they did to Joseph 20 years ago has conditioned them to see disaster and conspiracy in every shadow. They now live in a world where they expect judgment to fall at any moment. Their arrival in Hebron is not triumphant. They come with food, but they also come as bearers of terrible news. They gather before their father Jacob, the 10 of them now only 9, their faces grim. They recount the story, the words tumbling out in a rush of fear and awe. They tell him of the harsh lord of the land, the accusation of being spies, their imprisonment, and the vizier's unyielding demand to see their youngest brother to verify their story. And as they empty their sacks before their father, the nightmare is multiplied. Each man's pouch of silver is there. The mystery is compounded, and the fear in the camp becomes a palpable thing. Jacob listens, and the fragile peace he has known is shattered. The old wounds, the ones that never truly healed, are torn open. First, the loss of his beloved Rachel. Then, the savage death of Joseph, her firstborn. Now, this demand for Benjamin, her only other son. It is too much for the old man to bear. His grief, his fear, and his bitterness erupt in a cry of pure anguish that seems to come from the very depths of his soul. "You have deprived me of my children," he wails, his gaze sweeping over his sons with an accusatory fire. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me. It is the cry to cur of a man who believes he is at war with God and with fate, and he is losing. Reuben, the firstborn, the one who has always failed to lead, steps forward and tries to assert his authority with a promise so grotesque, so utterly tone-deaf, that it reveals the depth of his desperation and his foolishness. "You may put my 2 sons to death," he says to his father, offering up his own children as collateral, "if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back." It is an empty, horrifying gesture. What comfort would the death of 2 grandsons be to a man who has lost a son? Jacob dismisses him with a wave of his hand, his resolve hardening into an immovable wall. "My son will not go down there with you," he declares, his voice trembling with a mixture of grief and anger. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow. The matter is closed, but the famine is not. The famine is a patient, relentless beast. The grain from Egypt, as plentiful as it seemed, is not infinite, family eats, the days turn into weeks, the weeks into months, and the sacks grow lighter, and then they are empty. The faces of the children grow thin. The lowing of the hungry livestock becomes a constant, mournful sound. The reality of starvation begins to loom larger than even Jacob's profound fear. The old patriarch, who has wrestled with God and men, and won, is now being defeated by the silent, inexorable power of hunger. Finally, he can deny it no longer. He calls his sons to him. "Go back," he says, his voice heavy with resignation, "and buy us a little more food." It is Judah who steps forward now. Not Reuben, the ineffective firstborn. Not Simeon or Levi, the hot-headed men of violence. It is Judah, the man who proposed selling Joseph into slavery. The man who, in the intervening years, has known his own deep share of sorrow and loss, having buried 2 of his own sons and his wife. Grief and time have plowed deep furrows in his soul, and from those furrows, a new kind of character has grown. He is no longer the man of cold pragmatism. He is a man of sober, weighty responsibility. He speaks to his father not with a foolish oath, but with a clear, undeniable logic. The man warned us solemnly, "You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.'" He lays out the stark, unchangeable reality of their situation. There is no other way. Jacob rages against the inevitable. "Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother?" Judah doesn't flinch. He doesn't make excuses. He simply states the truth. The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. We simply answered his questions. How were we to know he would say, "Bring your brother down here"? And then Judah does something extraordinary. He makes himself the surety. He places his own life, his own future, into the scales to balance the risk of taking Benjamin. He performs the act of leadership Reuben was incapable of. "Send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die," he pleads with his father. And then comes the pledge, the words that mark the climax of his own redemption arc. "I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. This is not a rash vow. This is the solemn, binding oath of a man who understands the weight of his words. He is not just promising to protect Benjamin. He is promising to take the fall if he fails. He is willing to become the sacrifice to save the rest. He is placing the well-being of his father and the family above his own. Jacob looks at Judah, and in his son's steady gaze, he sees not the reckless boy of the past, but a man of substance, a man who can be trusted. The old man's will finally breaks. "If it must be, then do this," Jacob says, his voice a ghost of its former strength. He is a general surrendering to a superior force. He instructs them to take a gift to the Egyptian ruler, some of the best products of their land, a little balm and a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds. A pathetic pathetic offering from a starving land to the Lord of a land of plenty. But it is a gesture of honor he must make. Take double the amount of silver with you, he commands, and carry back the silver that was returned to you in the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. And then, the hardest part. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once. He releases his grip on his last treasure, and he offers a final, heart-rending prayer. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. And then, a sigh of utter surrender. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. He has let go. He has placed his fate, and the fate of his beloved son, into the hands of God and the mercy of a stranger. The brother's second journey to Egypt is shrouded in anxiety. They travel with the gift, the double portion of silver, and with Benjamin, a constant, fragile reminder of the terrible stakes of their mission. When they arrive and present themselves to Joseph's steward, their greatest fear is realized. The man who is in charge of my house, the steward is told, has some men here. Bring them to my house. They are not to be dealt with at the public granary. They are being taken to the vizier's private residence. Panic sets in. This is it. This is the trap. We were brought here because of the silver that was put back in our sacks the first time, they whisper frantically to one another. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. They rush to the steward, babbling their story about the money, protesting their innocence, offering to pay it back. The steward calms them with enigmatic words. It's all right, he says. Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver. And then he brings Simeon out to them, safe and sound. The gesture, meant to reassure, only deepens their confusion. They are brought into Joseph's house, a place of stunning wealth and luxury. They are given water to wash their feet, and their donkeys are fed. They are being treated as honored guests, and it terrifies them more than any accusation would have. They wait, trembling, for the master of the house to arrive for the midday meal. Joseph enters, and they bow low before him, presenting their meager gift. He asks after their welfare, and then he asks the question that is burning in his heart. How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still alive? He is still alive and well, they reply, bowing again. And then his eyes fall on Benjamin, his brother, his own mother's son. The boy has grown into a young man. In his face, Joseph sees the ghost of his mother Rachel and the reflection of his own lost youth. The composure he has so carefully maintained for months, the mask of the stern Egyptian lord, begins to crack. A wave of love and grief so powerful it threatens to overwhelm him washes over him. Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? He asks, his voice suddenly thick. God be gracious to you, my son. He cannot bear it another moment. He turns abruptly and leaves the room. He finds a private chamber, and there, the great vizier of Egypt, the man who holds the fate of the world in his hands, collapses and weeps like a child. He weeps for his lost mother. He weeps for his stolen childhood. He weeps for his beloved brother, who stands before him as a stranger. He weeps for the 22 years of separation and pain. After he has washed his face and regained his composure, he returns to the dining hall, a man at war with himself. The meal is served. The brothers are astonished to find themselves seated at their own table, arranged in perfect order from the eldest to the youngest. How could this Egyptian possibly know their birth order? The mystery and the fear deepen. But the food is good, and the vizier is gracious. He sends them portions from his own table, and Benjamin's portion is 5 times larger than anyone else's. It is another test. He is openly bestowing the same kind of favoritism on Benjamin that his father once bestowed on him. He watches their reactions. Does he see resentment, jealousy? He sees only confusion and awe. They drink and are merry with him, their fears momentarily forgot in the strange, intoxicating hospitality of their host. The next morning, they are sent on their way, their sacks full of grain. They are relieved, triumphant even. They have the grain, they have Simeon, and most importantly, they have Benjamin. They have succeeded, but Joseph is not finished. He has orchestrated one final, cruel, and brilliant test. He has instructed his steward to not only return their money again, but to place his own personal silver cup, a cup he claimed to use for divination, into the sack of the youngest, Benjamin. They have not gone far from the city when the steward on horseback overtakes them. He accuses them of repaying good with evil, of stealing his master's sacred cup. They are outraged. They are innocent. They are so certain of their innocence that they pronounce their own sentence. If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves. The steward agrees. The search begins. He starts with the sack of Reuben, the eldest, and moves down the line. One by one, their sacks are opened and found to be empty of any cup. With each cleared sack, their confidence grows. This is just another strange misunderstanding. They are almost free. Finally, the steward comes to Benjamin's sack. He opens it, and there, gleaming in the Egyptian sun, is the silver cup. The sound that goes up from the brothers is a collective howl of despair. They tear their clothes, the traditional sign of unbearable grief and horror. Their brief moment of relief is shattered, replaced by a catastrophe beyond their imagining. The trap has been sprung, and the jaws are clamped firmly on the one person they cannot afford to lose. They do not abandon Benjamin. They do not protest his individual guilt. They are a family, united in their doom. They load up their donkeys, and without a word, they all turn back towards the city to face the vizier. They are brought before Joseph once again, and they fall to the ground before him. Joseph's voice is like ice. What is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination? And now comes the moment that Joseph has been engineering all along. Now comes the climax of Judah's story. He steps forward, the spokesman for his shattered family. He does not make excuses. He does not plead innocence. He accepts the judgment for all of them. What can we say to my Lord? He begins, his voice heavy with despair. What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my Lord's slaves. we ourselves, and the one who was found to have the cup. Joseph waves a hand dismissively. Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you, go back to your father in peace. This is the final test. Joseph offers them an escape. He offers them the same choice they faced at Dothan. Sacrifice one brother for the sake of the many. They can go home. They can take the grain. They can save themselves. All they have to do is leave Benjamin behind. All they have to do is be the same men they were 22 years ago. But they are not the same men. And Judah, his heart breaking for his father, refuses the offer. He steps closer to the throne and begins to speak, a torrent of words pouring from his soul, in what is one of the most moving and powerful speeches in all of Scripture. He is no longer speaking to a distant Lord. He is pleading for his father's life. He respectfully asks for permission to speak, and then he lays out the entire story. He tells of the vizier's questions, of their answers about their father and their younger brother. He describes his father's deep, abiding love for the boy, the son of his old age. He recounts his father's terrible grief over the brother who was torn to pieces. He tells of Jacob's refusal to let Benjamin go, of his own solemn pledge to guarantee the boy's safety. He paints a vivid, heartbreaking picture of what will happen if they return without Benjamin. So now, Judah says, his voice breaking, if I go back to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, since his life is so closely bound up with the boy's life, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. He accepts the blame, not just for this, but for everything. He sees the chain of consequence stretching all the way back to their first sin, and then he makes his offer, the offer that proves, beyond any doubt, that he is a changed man. It is the offer that redeems a lifetime of failure and sin. He offers himself. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come upon my father. He is willing to trade his freedom for Benjamin. He is willing to become a slave in Egypt for the rest of his life, not to save his own skin, but to save his father from a grief that would kill him. He is finally his brother's keeper. He has passed the test, and Joseph breaks. Judah's words are the key that unlocks the dam of his carefully controlled emotions. This selfless love, this willingness to sacrifice, is the one thing he had not expected, the one thing he had to see to believe. He cannot maintain the charade a moment longer. He cannot bear their fear, their remorse, their love for their father. He cannot bear his own secret. He shouts an order to his attendants, his voice choked with sobs. Have everyone leave my presence. The Egyptian courtiers, bewildered, file out of the room, leaving the vizier alone with the terrified shepherds from Canaan. And then, in the sudden, echoing silence, Joseph weeps aloud. He weeps so loudly that the Egyptians in the next room can hear him. A great, tearing, cathartic sound that carries 22 years of pain. His brothers stare at him, frozen with fear and confusion. Who is this powerful, weeping man? He finally manages to speak, the words coming out in a gasp between sobs. I am Joseph. The 3 words land in the room with the force of a thunderclap. Time stops. The world tilts on its axis. Their minds cannot process it. Joseph, their brother Joseph, the boy they threw in a pit, the brother they sold as a slave. It's impossible. He is dead. He was torn apart by a wild animal. This man is a prince of Egypt, but he looks at them, and through his tears they see it. The eyes. They are the eyes of the boy they had wronged. He sees the terror dawning on their faces, the blood draining from their cheeks. Their guilt is now mixed with a mortal fear. They have been at the mercy of the brother they betrayed. He could have them all executed with a single word. He sees their fear, and his heart goes out to them. He speaks again, his voice softer now. Is my father still living? But they cannot answer. They are too terrified to speak. Come closer to me, he says gently. They inch forward, trembling. I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here. What comes next is not a lecture. It is not a reckoning. It is the single most profound act of forgiveness and reframing in the entire Old Testament. He gives them the key to understanding everything that has happened, not from their limited human perspective, but from God's vast, sovereign perspective. It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you, he tells them, his voice filled with a wonder that eclipses his own pain. For 2 years now, there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. He looks at their stunned faces and repeats the central truth, the truth that has redeemed all his suffering. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. The revelation is staggering. He is telling them that their act of malicious, hateful betrayal was, in the secret and mysterious calculus of God, the very instrument of their own salvation. Their greatest sin has been transformed into their greatest deliverance. He embraces them, one by one, weeping over them. And finally, the fear breaks, and his brothers are able to speak to him, and they too weep. The years of guilt and anger and grief are washed away in a flood of tears, and an impossible, miraculous reconciliation. The story concludes with a beautiful epilogue. Joseph brings his entire family, his father Jacob, and all their households to Egypt. They settle in the fertile land of Goshen. Jacob is reunited with the son he thought was dead, and he lives out his last years in peace. But after Jacob dies, the brothers' old fear resurfaces. Now that their father is gone, will Joseph's anger finally return? Will he take his revenge? They send him a message, pleading for forgiveness yet again. Joseph listens to their plea He weeps that after all these years, they still do not fully understand the depth of his forgiveness, the truth he has tried to show them. He summons them and reassures them one last time with the words that have become the capstone of his entire life story, the lesson that his suffering was meant to teach the world. Don't be afraid, he says. Am I in the place of God? And then the immortal words, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. He did not excuse their sin. He named it. You intended to harm me. But he did not allow their intention to be the final word. He showed them that a greater intention, a divine intention, had been at work all along, weaving even the darkest threads of human evil into a beautiful tapestry of redemption. Betrayal does not have to be the end of the story. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about seeing a bigger, better story being written. A story where even the deepest wounds can become the source of the greatest healing. And what was meant for evil, in the hands of a loving and sovereign God, can truly be meant for good.